You heard the prompt, so there it is. And then I'll just move to our next slide, which is going to tell you that this link, and I'll put it in the chat, is a link where you can place your comments, questions, things that you need to understand about this session and Cyversity. Put those comments in that survey link so that we can be abreast of everything and understand how the folks who come to our programs feel about our programs and what they would like to hear more of. This is a look at the next couple of months, right? The whole year is already booked out here. Of course, this month we have Octavia. We're going to be blessed with that one. You guys will see. Next month, Lisa Beth Latini, she's the CEO of Worldwide Luminen. You guys should come here, Worldwide Endeavors, excuse me, Lumen, Worldwide Endeavors, on Saturday, May 28th. In June, Ryan Higgins, he's the deputy CISO. He's the CISO and deputy CIO for Department of Commerce. He's going to be here in June. In July, Kiana Hicks, she's the founder of Pathway Forward. Octavia, you may remember her because she came on a Clubhouse. And then after her in August, I'm following the great people over in Clubhouse, Heather Grant Evans. Kiana Hicks and Heather have an incredible story that you should hear. The trials and tribulations, the development, and the the accumulation of accolades that they have developed over their time in security is incredible. In September, the chairman of High Tech is going to be with us, Guillermo Diaz. Great organization. When you get a chance, look it up online. And in October, Danielle Desilu, she's with Amazon. She's one of their senior leaders at Amazon, and we'll have a guest speaker at that conversation as well. One of my former mentees, again, William Shepard. And I forgot to mention with Kiana Hicks, she's going to have a guest speaker as well. That is Serenity Smile, one of my former mentees. But you should understand that this whole program is about mentee development. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing. Here's our speaker for today. I'm going to step back and make sure that we've got the people here that we need. Darwin, I know you're here. Let me find you. And Darwin, if you're here, come off mute, please. He told me he's going to be here. You know I'm ready, right, Octavia? In any event, I'm going to stop sharing here. Where's my thing at? Stop sharing there. And then we'll go here. Hey, Octavia, it's good to see you.
Hey, it's good to be seen.
No doubt. I know Darwin he texted me and said something about, what is it here? Let me just look at this for 1 second, guys. He's in someplace, but he's not here. And let me just ping him for 1 second and tell him he is not at the right location. And you are not at the right link. Register. And register. Anyway, guys, I'm going to get going with this because Darwin is not here yet, and I see we've got a full crowd. Anyway, Octavia, I typically always start these questions with, and until Darwin gets here, I typically always start these questions with, I know you. I know a little bit about you. We've known each other for a couple of years now, but I'm sure all of these folks here don't know you and have no idea about your journey. And so if you don't mind, spend some time here, as much time as you need, because we like to be verbose. Spend some time going through, and that's right, you're a PK, so you can get verbose. Spend some time talking to us about who you are, how you got here. Talk about mom too. That'll be great as well. Talk about all that stuff, and let's hear a lot about you if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, David. I'm so glad I'm here, and I'm glad to see all you up here as well. I do have, there's a couple of people in the audience that I've seen, and if you're joining later, then I'm probably not going to see you in the audience, but there's a couple of people in the audience that are near and dear to me. I'm going to leave the one that's really, really near and dear to me last, but there are, one of my team members, Pamela Nasi, she's here, so I appreciate your support, Premla, and then one of my mentors, Shamla Naidu, she's here, so I appreciate her as well. And then, the one that's near and dear to me is my mother, Reverend Helen Johnson Ford. And so I'll, as David has asked, I will integrate her into my story, because there's some funny things that kind of led my path and led my journey, that my mom, she thought she was steering me one way and kind of put me in another opportunity and a great path. So I appreciate her for doing that. So I am Octavia Howell. I am originally from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I can't say born and raised, because I'm just a child of Florida. So it's like we kind of migrated all over the place because I am a PK. And so what I tell people on a regular basis is that, my life story is about, how a little bit can actually create greatness, and how I kind of live my life to make everyone around me great, right? So if you come into my contact with me, my whole goal in life is to figure out kind of like, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Pretty Woman, but at the end of the movie, there's like this homeless guy walking down the street, and he's like, hey, everybody has a dream. What's your dream? And so I'm that person that's like, what's your dream? What's your dream? Let's try to make your dream come true. I actually started out in my career in network security. There was an interesting story of how I got there, and me and Darwin will talk about how I got there and kind of what came about me getting into network security. Someone who had no idea what network security was just this smart math girl who just liked to fix things and move on, right? And so I was a PK. My mom, as you see those flowers in the background of my mother's background, my mom was into interior decorating, and so she was always trying to teach me how to decorate stuff, and I had no interest in decorating anything whatsoever. Like she would try to show me how to, base a flower and to make stuff, and I was just like, I'm over here reading, or I'm doing a math problem, or I would prefer to like do this over here. So please, like, leave me alone. Yes, that's pretty, but I would prefer to do this over here. So eventually, my mother kind of caved in, and she figured out how I could create things with my talent. It was she saw that I had a talent for math, so she kind of harnessed that and supported that. So started in network security, was like the go-to person for networking, anything network security, anything firewall, proxy, packet captures, encryption, decryption, like that was your person. But then quickly I realized that being in the background is not going to move the business forward from a security perspective, right? It was very hard for me to articulate why security was important to the business, right? And so because it was so hard for me to articulate it, I would get frustrated. As I'm pretty sure a lot of you all who are in, highly technical roles, you get frustrated when people don't do what you know needs to be done, right? And it's hard to articulate that. So I decided to pivot and go more towards the business side and become a business information security officer. And when I did that, I got really close to the revenue, got really close to the business and how we make money and why we make money and how we can make more money, right? And then I married that with the knowledge that I have from security and from networking and why I can actually create network security and security as in general as a business differentiator, right? And so we actually took the message that I had, that I learned from the revenue generators and the sellers and how you sell, to how to sell security, right? And so I'm not a salesperson. However, I could sell the mess out of some security, right? I can make sure that those people who are interested in creating products and they are concerned about the supply chain and third-party risks are very comfortable because I'm selling security on a regular basis. So I'll stop there because I know, Darwin's here and we have a really good conversation to have for you all. But one of the things that I do want to leave you all with is if you are in security and if you are working there, the whole purpose is how do you make it a business differentiator, right? You definitely want to get to a point where you are not just doing it for security's sake, but how do you package your message and how do you, as an individual, even individual contributor, as a leader, how do you show your value to the organization, right? How do you show your value to the market if you are an entrepreneur? And so that's kind of what I want to get into and what we can kind of unpeel today.
Awesome. Thanks, Octavia. And sorry for the delay in getting in the room. I had a bit of trouble there, but great job on the intro. I love hearing kind of like the synopsis of your entire journey and story. And so with the notion that a lot of our audience, they're either just breaking into security or looking to break into security, I kind of wanted to go back into where your mind was at after you had graduated college, and how did you first decide that you were interested in security, and just kind of tell us a little bit about that story and that journey there at the beginning of your career.
Yeah, so it's funny because I actually went to college to be an attorney. So I went to college, my entire life, I told my mom I wanted to be a lawyer. So she, I was going to be a congresswoman. And that's kind of what, like, my end goal was to change the world, right? Congresswoman, I saw Maxine Brown and, Corbin Brown and Maxine Brown. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to be them. Like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to create like this whole big, understanding that, Black women can come in and like just dominate and change everything and make space for everyone, not just Black women, but Black men, Latino women. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I went to school thinking I was going to be an attorney. I was bored out of my mind in my freshman year. Like, literally, I was just like, and Spelman at the time was $25,000 a year. I think now it's like $40,000, right? But it was $25,000 a year, and that was a lot of money to be bored. And so what I did is I changed my major. Well, initially I didn't change my major. I switched to take a computer science class my freshman year, and opposed to taking it my senior year, like everyone else that was political science majors. So I took it my freshman year. My professor asked me what my major was, and I told her it was political science, and she laughed in my face. And it wasn't like a small, like it was just like a gut busting, hollering, like, ha! Like, she was just floored that, someone that had the capabilities that I had would be a political science major. And so, long story short, I end up, without my mother knowing, I changed initially from political science major to political science major, computer science minor. Then I changed from computer science to computer science major, political science minor. And then I just dropped it all together, and my mother didn't find out that I changed my major until my junior year of college. I can say all this now because I'm in a different country and she can't do anything to me. So, but yeah, so when I graduated, because my entire life I set on being an attorney, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I got out of school, right? So I did this rotational program at Freddie Mac, and I thought I wanted to be a database administrator because my research was in multimedia database informatics, which is pretty much like blogging and what we now call data and analytics. Back then, it was just playing with like models and databases. Like, it was no such thing as DNA at that time, right? So I went on to Freddie Mac, and when I got out of the rotation, well, I went through the database portion of the rotation, and it was I apologize for any DBAs here, but it was the most boring. Like, I was bored. I thought I was going to be like creating schemas and like, you know, creating databases and doing like database architecture stuff, like stuff that I did during my research. Literally, it was like hitting a button to execute. Like scripts were already created. All I was doing was like execute, enter, like typing the enter. And I was like, this is like the worst thing ever for me. Because I think I have undiagnosed ADHD, like, but it was, and I think most of us do, but it was just one of those things where I was just like, I can't do this, right? Like I can't, this can't be life. And so I ended up in voice over IP. And that was during the time, it was in 2006. And so during 2006, there was this jump from analog, you know, telephone service to digital, to voice over IP. And no one really knew how it worked, right? So like how we're on this conference right now, it was not heard of in 2006, right? It was just trying to figure out how do we actually do phone service over the internet? And yet alone, nobody thought about, you know, video. So during that time, there was a lot of crosstalk. So you would pick up the phone and you would hear someone else's conversation, right? Because there weren't any, there wasn't a lot of ways to like prevent crosstalk from happening. So what I did was on my own, because I was just like, I was bored. So I figured out, how do you block crosstalk from happening in voice over IP calls? And so I created what we now call access control lists, but I didn't know what they were. I literally just was like, this IP address should not go to this IP address. I'm blocking this port. I'm going to put a deny on this. Like, so I'm just going to allow all this, and this is the only traffic that needs to flow. So, so after about 6 months on the voice over IP team, I was bored again. And they were like, this girl, like, she gets bored too easily. Like, we can't figure out what to do with her. And so they talked to my manager at the time. Her name was Babs Godoy, or is Babs Godoy. She talked to her peers in network security, and she was like, can you guys, you know, your industry is the only one that's always changing. Like, so can you like take her and, you know, kind of groom her and help her through? And so there, you know, there was a guy who was leaving, and he was the team lead, and he convinced them to he had a conversation with me, and he said if he left, he would not authorize, like he would not authorize anyone else to take his position except me. So he lobbied for them to lower the band, lower the salary, lower the grade, so that I can actually have an opportunity to actually get into network security. And actually, you know, some people may think that's a bad thing that they lowered everything, but during that time, we think they're gatekeepers now. Oh my God, like in 2006, you had to have 5 years experience to be in network security, right, David? Like you could not come into any security domain without at least 5 years experience of technology, right? So it was kind of like, that's why they got paid more, because they were all like in their 40s and late 30s. And so I remember doing the interview, and me and Darwin talked about this earlier. During the interview, I was so excited, and because I'm this smart person who thought she knew everything, right? I was like, yeah, like, I think I could do this network security thing, you know, and he's like, do you know about firewalls? And I'm like, nope. Like, I don't know what that is. And he said, well, you know, I heard that you put together, you know, really good access control lists. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, what's the access control list? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, you remember when he was like, was that you that like put together like the ports for the video conferencing? I was like, oh, you're talking about the block list? Yeah, I did that. And he's like, yeah, they're called access control lists. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Is that the same as ACL? And he's like, yeah. And he's looking at me like I had 5 heads, right? And I'm like, okay, I don't know. And he's like, well, you know, do you have any questions for me? And I'm like, yes, who are our customers? Again, he just kind of was like, I don't understand the question. I'm like, yeah, who are our customers? Like, who do we serve? And he's like, everybody in the company. And I'm like, that's impossible. Like, how can we serve everybody in the company? Like, you wouldn't be able to do that. And he's like, do you know what a network port is? I'm like, I know what a TCP port is. Like, it's literally like he was asking me these questions and I had no idea. And so he literally looked at me and said, okay, look, I am told that you're really smart. I've been told that you're smart, and I've been told that you're going to do this. And I was also told, and everybody supports me hiring you onto our team. He was like, I believe you might know what you're doing. Let's just, don't worry about the interview. He was like, we'll figure it out. So what I found out was like all the stuff that I'd been doing actually had names to it that was in networking and security that I just had no clue what I just knew. It was common sense to me. I just knew things needed to get done and I did them, and I did not realize all this other stuff. So it was interesting. So that's how I kind of got into network security. It was literally, I was doing it all already, kind of like this, kind of like a, airheaded person just walking around like, like, I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna fix that, but not really realizing there was actual names for the things that I was doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Octavia. So two things that I kind of wanted to unpack there. The first one goes back to something that you said a little bit earlier, and kind of how you had to sneak your major change past your parents and your mom, or else she probably would have been pissed. And I think with a lot of us folks that are that first generation to be born and raised and go to school here in America, our parents have this vision of what they want us to be, whether it's like a doctor, a lawyer, or a politician. And in your case, you want to be a problem solver, whether it was like math, comp sci. And so that's what really drew your interest. And I was thinking in the back of my head, like, how much talent is lost because folks want to please their parents, essentially. And so I think one of the key things in cybersecurity, key skills that help ensure that you stay satisfied with your career is that curiosity. And it definitely seems like you had that curiosity very early on in your career. The second thing that I wanted to unpack is tied back to that curiosity is you're a natural born problem solver. So although you didn't know what a firewall was, you knew how to control access and block ports and prevent this voice over IP crossover. And so you don't necessarily, I guess the key takeaway there is for the folks on the call is that you don't necessarily have to know all of the different acronyms. You don't necessarily have to understand every single concept like an access control list or a firewall or load balancing and things of that nature. You just have to have a knack and a good approach to problem solving, which Octavia definitely had. And I guess the other part is the gatekeeping, right? When we hear this jargon in cybersecurity, like red teaming, penetration testing, firewalls, and just a bunch of different terms that we may not know at surface, a lot of folks get intimidated. And I think that's part of the reason why folks do see cybersecurity as a big intimidating field. But Octavia, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that those 3 points that I just touched on.
Yeah, no, 100%. A lot of times, I tell people all the time, you are problem solvers, and what we have to do is sometimes, like, people are like, oh, how do I break into cyber? It's like, really, that's the first issue, is because we think there's something to break into, right? And so it's kind of like this, I'm on this journey to demystify cybersecurity. The things that you do on a regular basis, you have a fit in security, right? You may not understand exactly what the different terminologies are, but there are things that can map directly to the things that you do on a regular basis that you're actually amazing in, right? I will tell you, when I was studying for my CISSP, it was really intimidating, because I felt like I knew, like, people were like, oh, you probably can walk in and pass it right now. Well, the issue was I never understood the basics, right? And so because I didn't understand the name, and when I say the basics, I'm not talking about how to do things. I'm talking about the naming of things. And a lot of times those naming, because you don't have, that's why mentors and mentorship is so important, because you sometimes need someone to talk to kind of break that down and help you understand that you already know, right? It's not as hard as you think it is. And let's just talk about the things that you already do. Let's talk about what you already know how to solve for, and how that actually ties back to things that we have in the industry. And it's, at one point, it's kind of like learning a new language, right? This past week, or actually this week, I was in Montreal, and in Montreal they speak French. I speak no French at all. I didn't even know how to say I don't speak French. I do now. I think it's what is it? No parle français. So right, and so it's like, you know, when you learn that additional language, it's just mapping what you already know, right? And I think we have to get out of the understanding that we're breaking into something and start using the terminology that we're shifting into security instead of breaking, because there's nothing to break into.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's like podcasts and a bunch of blogs, just a ton of content out there, labeled like breaking into security, 5 steps to break into security. When you could really just take like things that you do every day, like problem solving, those same study habits you can apply to learning cybersecurity. And essentially for folks looking to make that transition mid-career, let's say, from another career, whether it's like a graphic designer or someone who's doing software engineering, but they want to get into cybersecurity, they could take those same skills that they applied in learning and getting into those fields, and apply it to getting into cybersecurity. It's not something where you have to like smash or kick down a door, or someone has a lock on the door for you to get in. We need the people, and we absolutely want folks to get in, obviously, because we are understaffed in, I guess, this entire cyber war now, with organizations under attack every day. So thanks for that, Octavia. So shifting over to kind of like my next question here. So from establishing yourself as the network security SME, subject matter expert within your organization, to becoming a CISO, which you are today, what are some of the key decisions and moments that help define your journey? And then also, could you speak a little bit about how you identified and decided that you wanted to be a CISO?
Yeah, I don't know if I identified that I wanted to be a CISO. I think it was more of like my mentors and people who kind of just met me for the first time and like I fell in love with my personality. They were like, we need you to be a leader, you know, in this field. Like, we need more leaders like you, because if we're going to actually attract talent, we can't be so rigid, right? Like, there was, when I came in, if you were a CISO, now I kind of look back, I look back at the people who were CISOs when I was like in my 20s, and I'm talking to them and being them, you know, where either I'm like, you know, in my career, I'm a little bit above them, or we're on the same level. I realized that it was very mystifying, and it probably should not have been, right? It probably should have been a little bit easier to get there. But I think the major thing for me is I felt like at a point that I was siloed. I knew network security like the back of my hand. Matter of fact, when the technology team would troubleshoot and they couldn't figure something out, they would take a packet capture and it would land in my inbox. And at the time I had a team of like 40 something people, but they didn't want my team to look at their packet capture. They wanted me to look at their packet capture, right? And so at one point I felt like I was like the packet capture person. It was like, you know, I was teaching my team how to read packet captures, but everyone was just trying to get me to help them troubleshoot. And I'm like, I am not the troubleshooting queen. Like, this is not what we're doing, right? Right? Here I am trying to study leadership books and trying to be a better leader and trying to manage my team. And you have an entire organization still treating me like an individual contributor, or the entire organization still kind of saying, you know, it's kind of like, get Octavia to kind of look at this and that. At one point, I felt like I was a Mikey of technology within my organization. Anything they did not understand. And for those who are a little bit younger, there was a commercial, and like, there was a kid named Mikey, and Mikey would eat anything, right? And so if someone didn't want it, they would say, give it to Mikey, he'll eat it, right? And so I was like, oh, well, we don't really understand, you know, is IAM technology or is it security? I don't know, give it to Octavia, she'll lead the IAM team. Is network security technology or security? I don't know, give it to Octavia, she'll lead that team. Okay, well, is like certificate management, is that like something that the business?
We lost your audio there, Octavia. Sorry.
You're not unmuted. You're not muted, so there's something else there.
AirPods.
Connecting now. Let's see. Try now. And
can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, hold on.
So we left off on the part where everyone was sending off, let's say, whether it was identity and access management, issue or challenge, or something for network security, or logging and monitoring, they would send it off to you because they knew you were extremely smart and you had the drive and the initiative to bring them to the promised land. And so I guess one question that I had there is like, how did you like find out how to set those boundaries and tell them like, hey, no longer will I continue to be your Mikey. I'm looking for a leadership position, and this is how I want to like build my story out. And so just a little bit there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. When you're at a company and you have a reputation for doing certain things, that's the role that they see you in. Right. And so, and this is what I try to get people to understand sometimes. Some companies if you're not at a higher leadership level, right? If you're not at a higher leadership level, you are set in a box. You're set in they have a plan for your role. They have a plan that they think is what you would want because you're good at it. Right. And if we don't talk, and if we don't advocate, and if we don't build those relationships and have those conversations early, we can find ourselves in a position where we are super unenthused about our jobs, right? Because it's one of those things where we feel as if people are doing, like, giving our career to us instead of us being the captain of our own career. So, and this is me, I am not telling anyone to leave their jobs unless you resonate with what I'm saying, right? Sometimes you have to leave, period, full stop, right? And it's not necessarily you, the company not caring for you or the company not supporting you. It's sometimes you grow beyond your role. And when you have a role, right, and that is the role that they have, and a lot of times, especially minorities, especially women, especially Black women, I take it, Black women do this all the time. We do it, we need to recognize when we do it and leave and go be great somewhere else, right? But we grow out of those roles because we are awesome and we are great, right? And so when we grow out of those roles, then we have to either go to another role, and sometimes that other role is at a different company. And we have to make those decisions whether or not we can actually grow in that company if they're going to recognize you in that other role. I realized at the company that they were giving me all this extra, all these extra teams. I had the largest team in technology. I had a direct manager, and then I was dotted line to someone else, right? So I was a direct into the CTSO, which is a Chief Technology Security Officer. And then I was a dotted line into the CIO, right? The Chief Information Officer. And it was hard, right? And when you are, and they were like, well, this is not the way that the organization was supposed to function. So Octavia is actually like this person who is like messing up the flow. Like we're like, how is she going to do the budget? Whose budget is she under? Like we have to do all this stuff because Octavia is holding all these teams. And so so that they came to me and they said, choose, are you security or are you technology? And I was like, oh, what are you talking about? Like there's no difference. And when I said that, I realized, you know what? You're never going to really go into the business role, because even if you set the boundaries and say, stop giving me all this extra stuff, even though I was good at what I was doing, I wanted to do something else. And I could not be upset at the company or the people who were making those decisions. I can only look at myself. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I asked myself, have you had those conversations with anyone besides yourself that you wanted to go into a different role? Have you really sat down and understood what that looks like and what role that will be? Because they would ask me, well, what would be your ideal role? And I'm like, I don't know, like maybe this or maybe that. I had to practice with myself and understand, listen, in order for me to actually impact change and move into the business and do what I felt like I was destined to do, and like make a change, not just within the company, but outside of the walls of that company, right? I needed to be in a different position. And they didn't have that position in the company. So my choice, the boundary that I set, was to leave. Because if I did not leave, then I would be doing a disservice to that company, to everyone that looked up to me in that company, and most of all to myself.
Wow, that's a very, very inspiring response. And also, I feel like I got a little bit of goosebumps. And so I think us as minorities, we're a bit timid when it comes to kind of flexing our muscles inside of the corporate world, whether it's asking for a salary increase, negotiating that salary, voicing, and kind of just etching that line in the sand with your boundaries. We're a bit timid, right? Because it's not something that's natural to most of our families. And so we definitely have to be better at asking for more and letting folks know exactly what we want and what we don't want and will not tolerate. So that's a very good takeaway from that, Octavia. And then the other thing
And
is,
I would say, before we move on, when you say what we will not tolerate, there is a way to communicate what you will not tolerate that does not make you seem like you are trying to bully or like being angry when you say what you won't tolerate. It's just like I had a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and I said, yeah, that was very disrespectful. They're like, oh no, I didn't mean it like that. I'm like, but it's just the way it landed. It was disrespectful, and it's just the way that it landed. And I just wanted to let you know that it felt disrespectful. And she was like, oh, I'm not trying. I was like, we're just getting to know each other. Like, I didn't get into an argument, right? Because normally old Octavia would have said, I don't know who you're talking to. You're not going to talk to me that way. But it was just like, I did not accept the apology, but you had to, it was the way that you communicate. You do it with, I'm just letting you know how what you did made me feel. And whatever you do with that information is what you do with it. But this is how I feel about it. Right. And I think we have to be careful in the way that we want to clap back, because we're so used to fighting. And sometimes we have to realize that the people who are hurting us or doing things to us, they don't know that they're doing it, because they're hurt too. And they're functioning in the way that they know how to function. And sometimes we have to realize that we just need to open their eyes sometimes, not aggressively and not with attitude or anything like that, but it's in a very loving, hey, that just landed a little bit disrespectful to me, and I know you didn't mean to do that, right? But
perfect. Yeah.
Sometimes they don't know, Rhonda. Sometimes they don't.
Oblivious.
They are oblivious.
And so this, I think we could go on we could go for days about this topic and emotional intelligence and not letting these issues fester in our minds, leading to stress and burnout later down the path, and like in turn, negatively affect like our family lives and our personal lives. And so you need to get that out and directly with the person that is causing that kind of friction within the workplace. So that's a very good topic to touch on for everybody here. The other thing that I was gonna say is just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's like you have a wide back, you can do all of this work, but you're just one person and you're a human. And sometimes the stuff that you're doing, you're carrying a very heavy workload, but you're not getting paid for that very heavy workload. So do not I guess do not let yourself be exploited just because you're super smart, you love the stuff that you're doing. It's a quick way to burn out. Octavia, I believe you had something to say there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about taking the opportunity and knowing your worth, right? Talk to somebody, understand what's out there in the marketplace, understand what you can and cannot do. I think David had something to say. Did you?
I did. And the one thing I wanted to say is that I was told by a mentor early on is that you cannot blame someone for doing something to you that you did not tell them they cannot do. And so
Absolutely.
you need to be very upfront with that and have a very frank conversation and let them know where the line was crossed. So that's all, and I'll stop talking.
Yeah, no, 100%. If they don't know, then you can't hold them accountable for things they don't know. And that's how we get upset and we feel like people are purposely doing things to us, but they're just functioning the way that they know how to function in their very toxic selves. So sometimes, if there's a toxic person, they can be toxic with other people. They just don't have to be toxic to you, right? Right, go take that toxicity somewhere else. But when you come to this door, please leave, just like, in my house, you take your shoes off in the mudroom, take those shoes off and you can, you're entering what my mother calls holy ground at this point.
Amen. Amen. Awesome. And so now moving on a little bit and switching pace, you have extreme influence within our corner of the cybersecurity industry and community, just because of who you are, the work that you've done, and kind of like the confidence that you exude, and just again everything that you've done and accomplished. So I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about your efforts to uplift, empower, and cultivate a community of women and minorities through your roles at ITSMF, Augustus Redefined, and now as a board member at Cyversity. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, now you're starting to talk about stuff that I really love. Right? This is so you guys heard me at the beginning saying I wanted to change the world, like be a congresswoman, all this stuff, right? So my mom kind of jokes with me sometimes. She was like, when she realized what I was really doing in the industry, she was like, all the stuff you said you wanted to do when you were a kid, you're still doing it. You're just not an attorney doing it, but you're still you're doing it bigger, right? One of the things that I joined ITSMF, which is the IT Senior Management Forum, which is an organization for Black technologists who are in leadership positions, right? Senior directors above. What we actually started doing, I think around 2017, 2018, is they actually started kind of opening it up for people who were not necessarily senior directors, but people who were really ready to go into leadership positions as well. And so just seeing that on the technology side, and security used to be within the role in the realm of technology, right? CISOs used to report to CIOs, and after 2017, that switched, right? More cyber attacks. The board needed to understand what was going on from a security perspective, and so the CISO got moved up to start reporting directly to, in some cases, the CEO, or the president or the organization, or the COO, or the actual general counsel. And so it got moved away, even though we still had technology functions, it got moved away from being under technology, which in some cases would minimize the voice of the security leader, right? And so when that actually happened, I'm in ITSMF and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm seeing all these like Black excellence around me, right? But I did not see I did not see a lot of women in security that was within those organizations. And so it was maybe, we have like a cybersecurity collective, and there were, I think at the time there were about 12 of us, and 2 of us were women. And one of them was like a director, and the other one was a CISO. And she was, she was all over the place, because she, at the time, it was Meredith Harper. She was the only Black woman CISO for a long time, right? And so she was on everyone's panel. Everybody, everyone wanted her to be something. So she wasn't very available. And Meredith and I were talking, and Meredith said, I'm about to retire in about 10 years. And I can't let this industry be the same way as it was when I came in. And she was like, I have 10 years to go. And she was like, I can't do this by myself. This is crazy. And in my head, I was just like, like, you cannot be the mentor for everybody. Like, this is ridiculous, right? And so we went to a conference in Atlanta, and there was a woman there who is now like the head of digital at Essence. And she said, oh, well, everybody used to call me a unicorn, which everyone called me a unicorn because I was the only Black woman who was like willing to pull people up that they saw. And so who was at a leadership level. And so she's like, everybody called me a unicorn, but I have a lot of friends who do the same thing that I do. And I'm in the audience, I'm in the front row, and I'm like, I have a lot of friends who do the same thing I do. And I looked there and she said, so why don't we just get an army of unicorns? And I was like, oh, yes. Instead of you coming to me all the time, or instead of you going to Meredith all the time, I'm going to show you all these amazing Black women who are doing it, who are amazing in cybersecurity. So I decided that I was going to, create this thing, and I called it Augustus Redefined. And the reason I called it Augustus Redefined is because my father's middle name was Augustus. My father's Jamaican. My mom and my dad, they had this thing where they wanted their kids to like have royalty, whatever, right? So if you know anything about the Roman Empire, Caesar Augustus' real name was Octavius. So I had a brother named Octavius, and then he had a niece. And then Julius Caesar had a niece who was Octavius's sister named Octavia, right? And so my name is Octavia, my brother's name is Octavius, my dad's name is Augustus, right? And so during the Roman Empire, Caesar Augustus redefined what it meant to rule in Rome. And during that time, they expanded the Roman Empire above any other time. And so Augustus Redefined was created to expand the visibility, voice of Black women in cybersecurity that actually promotes them, nurtures them, give peer mentorship, and pushes them to advancement, not complacency, not someone's doormat, not someone's dumping ground, but really pull them to leadership and actually lead security teams, high-functioning security teams that are multicultural and highly impacting in the industry. And so ITSMF kind of helped bring that vision together. We're doing amazing things. And then, Cyversity kind of knocked on my door and was like, hey, can we do what you're doing with Augustus Redefined and just expand that and amplify that to not just Black women, to everybody? And I was like, yeah, like, absolutely. And so my position on the board is membership development, and membership development into now you've gotten into security. So now what? How do you now move from an analyst or someone just on the red team or on the blue team or purple team how do you move to actually be a security leader? And how do you move that forward to really expand your career?
Awesome. Yeah, that's key, because it's one thing to get into the cybersecurity industry. It's another to be successful and just continue climbing up the ladder and get into, whether you want to be a CISO where you're at, Octavia, or whether you want to be more on the technical side and be a staff engineer, whatever the case may be. Here at Cyversity, we have all those flavors and mentors and folks that can help guide you through that path. So that was perfect, and I think that's a great place to conclude it and open it up for questions. David, Octavia, I'm gonna open it up for questions either in the chat, or if anybody wants to come off mute and ask the questions live, by all means.
Darwin, thank you very much for stepping in and being a guest moderator today. It's really great to, like I said in one of my notices on Facebook or whatever, it's always good to see a mentee take that next step, or that several next steps, because you've gone beyond quite a bit of the things that we spoke about in your early years. And that first year when you came to Cyversity in Washington, when you drove your crew down from Providence, Rhode Island, on spring break, no less. You didn't go past us to South Beach. You went, you stopped in Washington, and you gave us, and you graced us with your presence. And we, and you could, as you could see here, there are a lot of the folks that we started the Hustlers group with that are still here today and growing and developing like you and yourself. Listen, I had a question for you, Octavia, but I also want, and this is what we say at the Hustlers group, which is now Cyversity Impact. Don't be shy. Don't even waste your time with that. Don't waste any of your time being shy. You step to the front of the room, and regardless of passing or failing, step to the front of the room, because the front of the room is where you belong. You step to the front, ask your question, and there's no bad questions here. And we've got a great speaker, and we've got a great guest here today. And I see Omar came off being mute and became visible. And that means, Omar, you have a question. But do you mind if I ask my question first, Omar? You could not, right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Good. So, I just wrote this down. Well, let me just give you a blank question here. There are a lot of mentees in the room, Octavia. What question would you have for them? Whether they were walking into your office trying to get a position with you, or they're starting out, or they're in their process. What questions do you have for the mentees here today that have joined us?
It'd be the same question I ask anyone who I'm interviewing. And Premila actually knows this. What's your end goal? And I'm not talking about 5, 10 years. I mean, when you decide that, what would you be doing when you are fully fulfilled in your career, right? Not what you want to do, with me or in the role, but like, what is your full end goal? Because I believe that you should start with the end in mind, right? So if you start with the end in mind and you are clear, then you will make sure that every twist and turn that comes your way puts you to the end goal. So that would be my question.
Thank you very much for that answer. That's a great answer. Always start with the end in mind, because that way you can work your way back and see and foretell what's coming. You could see that whole process developing. Omar, I'm sure you have a question.
Yes. First, I want to say thank you for being here. It's been really enlightening. I just have two related questions. I guess the first one is, I'm just curious to understand how you navigated through corporate politics, corporate America. I know it's difficult. I guess there are difficult scenarios we have to go while we go through our professional career. And the second question, it's related. I understand that we need to be able to show our value and know, find that balance. That's it. Thank you.
So I will answer the second question first. I would say, if you are telling the truth, It's not bragging. So if what you're saying is 100% authentic and that's what you're doing, then you own and you claim what you're doing. Because if you don't own it, someone else who does know how to show their values will own your work. So I do not believe in the collective we. I had a boss at one time. He said, "Oh, well, we want to make sure that we're, speaking as a collective we." I'm like, well, the collective we didn't do this work. So we can't speak as a collective we, right? So sometimes you need to make sure that you're just telling the truth, right? That's not bragging. If you did a thing and you accomplished a goal, you own that. Right. And a lot of times our culture, and I know a lot of Eastern cultures don't believe in African cultures, or those who derive from African cultures, you don't believe in bragging, and that's very hard for us to do. Right. But I would say sometimes just write down what you set out to accomplish. And if you accomplish those goals, then just say what you did to accomplish it. It's not bragging, and it's just telling the truth of what A and B happened, and from A to B, I did LMLP and all this other stuff, and I got to Z, right? And that's it. The first one about politics. I used to believe that there was a such thing as corporate politics. I now believe that there's such thing as corporate relationships. And politics are not, so when someone is not in power, they feel like it's politics, right? But really it's about relationships and when you get to know an individual. So if the person in leadership, well, I'll put it like this. When I was in elementary school and middle school, I placated to my teachers, right? I would say, hey, if I knew the answer, if I knew how to do a problem one way that it was easier for me to do, but my teacher wanted it to be done another way, I would do it my way to check my answer, but I would do it the way that the teacher wanted it to be done, because at the end of the day, the teacher was the one that was giving me the grade, right? But I always check my work with the way that I knew how to do things. So I do the same thing in corporate America. Like I get to know the teacher, I get to know or the person in power, right? And the person in power is not always your boss. You make sure you have that relationship so that you're not jumping over them, but you get to know who the person that makes who makes things work, and you figure out how they, function and move, and what they think about and what things that drives them. And when you understand their drivers, then you understand how to move, right? And so a lot of times people think it's politics, and really what it is someone in power's feelings got hurt because they felt disrespected them. And that's when we think politics happens. And that's not really politics, it's just humanity being humans.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for the question, Omar. Kirby, I see you became visible there. Do you have a question, sir?
Yes, I do. Thanks. Hi, Olivia. Great talk. I've heard you speak a number of times, so I was happy to join today to listen in. I was not aware of your role on the board. You said you were kind of helping with membership, kind of professional development. I know there's a lot of focus within Cyversity about getting folks into cybersecurity. For someone like myself who's been there for 20 years, but trying to make that next step from, to executive leadership, are there any programs that you can speak of that you have in mind, maybe coming down the pipe that we can expect to see? And on top of that, do you have any thought on the programs like the Heinz CISO program, or now NYU has a CISO program, grad certificate, and the value that either of those may help in someone trying to make that next step?
Yeah, no, thank you for your question, Kirby. I am working on some things, myself, Larry and Maggie, we have a lot of things in the pipeline for those members who are at a higher level within their career, not entry level. And so one of the things is partnering with ITSMF. There's a leadership meeting program that they actually have called they call it the apprenticeship, but it's more of, you know, management level, executive level, and then someone just coming into initial management, right? And how those things can actually work together and how you actually show value for all leaders. And so we're working on a partnership with them as well. Also working to see if we can actually have partnerships with the CISO program to see if we can kind of, get more people trained in really understanding the full field value of a CISO and what a CISO should have, and different aspects of that as well. And so we're working on some things for you, because when I came in to Cyversity, I told them, I was like, I'm just here to help, because you guys really don't have a program for me, but I'm just here to help, right? And so we're trying to change that. We're trying to have programming for people like me, like you, like Shamla, like David, who've been in for a while, and we've been giving back for so long. And we need fuel too, so that we can continue to strengthen the pipeline, right? So it's coming. There's some logistics ahead that's being worked out, but definitely coming. And hopefully we'll be able to preview some things during our conference in November.
Look,
Thank you.
There's some conversation. Sorry, Kirby, to cut you off. I apologize.
No, I just said thank you.
Thank you. There are some conversations that I'm having in the background that I'd like to bring to the front of the room, if you don't mind. One of our attendees is concerned about Cyversity, or this particular forum, not being a forum where there are people like her or people in general that are neurodiverse. Look, I'm sure there are people in this conversation today that are neurodiverse that just don't want to self-identify. And that's no problem. And that's not it's not a challenge for them to not self-identify, or for you to not self-identify. But neurodiverse people are very skilled and specifically talented people. You should not, under any circumstance, feel that this is not a place. Like I said to you in the chat in the back, and I'm the kind of person who'll bring that kind of conversation to the middle of the floor almost immediately to address it, so that you could feel a specific level of comfort that you're in the right place, and those conversations can be held here. As I was saying, one of the financial institutions that I'm working with in my company, Austin, Brooklyn, they specifically want me to bring them neurodiverse folks, because they know neurodiverse people, because they know that their skills and talents are above and beyond many of ours, because they can focus so well. So please do not feel isolated or whatever in the conversation. You're welcome here. We want you here. I want you here. And you ask anybody, I'm just that kind of person. We just need you here. So listen, I know, and there are other folks in the room who've got some, there are other folks in the room that have, and like I said, let's contact me directly. I'll put my email in the chat so you can call me, you can direct me. Octavia, we've got a little bit of time left, and you are a CISO, and that's where you are today. The question I have for you, and it's probably not the last one, because I'm sure, and I hope other people have questions as well. What's the roadmap look like for Octavia? Where are we going?
Are you asking me my question?
Yes, dear. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I say this, and everyone that I work with knows this. My goal is to be a CEO of a major technology or security company. The reason why I want to be a CEO of that company is not to be on some type of top anything, right? But the reason is the same reason I wanted to be a people leader in the first place. When you have an opportunity and the ability to impact other people's lives in a positive way, you do that, right? And so what other opportunity do you have? At the end of the day, the CEO sets the strategy, actually helps with the board, really, understands what is important. And if the CEO is not targeted on people development, then the company will not be targeted in people development. And so my end goal before I'm not gonna retire, y'all, I'm gonna quit. So that's what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna be working till I'm 60 something years old. I plan on getting my money, making a really big impact, and then having going somewhere and sipping some Mai Tais, and every now and then coming back and talking to, the generation 20, 30 years from now, so that they can continue doing what we jumped into. I didn't start it, but I jumped into it. So yeah, that's why my goal is to be CEO, and probably CEO of multiple companies, but it's really to be a change agent at the end of the day.
Sure. I think that's great. I always tell my friends also, when I retire, I want to take all my calls on the beach. I'll be there in 2 weeks, but today I'm on the beach taking my calls, and I'll be there shortly, because most of what we do is, especially your background and my background, it's about service, right? It's about service. So I see some other luminaries in the industry, from the industry on this call today. I'm not going to call your name out, but if you want to step up and ask a question or say hi, that would be great. But I'm not going to call your name out. But nonetheless, Octavia, does anybody else have any other questions for Octavia?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Octavia. So when you made the switch from VoIP to the network security engineer, how are you able to do that with like so much confidence and not like doubt yourself and be like, I don't really have the skills, or how are you able to handle that change?
So I'm a little different, just a little bit. My mom said that and she could validate this story, when I was, 3 or 4, Mom, I used to walk in a room. Oh, 2, sorry, I was 2. I would walk in a room, and as soon as I walked in a room, I would say, "I'm here." And coupled with the fact that I'm also Jamaican and Bahamian, right? And so you couple all of that confidence, I saw, when I was growing up, I saw Black people who were teachers, lawyers, educators, Congress people, I saw that, right? So there was no doubt in my mind that I had to do something and that I could do it. It's just, it wasn't a thing about whether I could do it. It was about when I was going to do it.
Gotcha.
Right. And so I think confidence isn't an issue for me. For me, I think the issue more is I am a recovering perfectionist. And so that is I have to learn when to stop doubting myself and know that what I'm putting forth is the actual best thing, right? Because what I consider great may be wonderful to someone else, right? And they may not need wonderful, they just need great, right? And I would say to anyone on this call, recognize when you're being, when the thing that you think is really small, when someone blows it up, maybe you have everything that you need and have all the skills that you need, right? And maybe you are working too hard, and maybe you were trying to give too much, because just try it out. If you need to go perfect it later, go perfect it a little bit later, but see what happens when you give the start.
Great. I'll add to that. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Right? It is. No one's perfect. Christ, this is the only cat I know that's perfect. Right? So you gotta expect and do the best you can. As we close out, I want to start by saying thank you to Darwin for volunteering to take the lead, and for volunteering. All of the mentees here and folks here that come to this monthly conversation, step up and take the mantle to interview one of the folks that we've got coming up. And I'll put that slide up again, that series of slides up again, so that we can all see that, who's going to be coming in the next series of months. Octavia. I always say, man, I'm so happy to speak with you and to connect with you. And the last time we spoke on Clubhouse, it was just a great time to go back and forth with you about our backgrounds and who we are. And me growing up as you know, from family from Trinidad, Tobago, and St. Croix, and my dad from Montserrat. You know, for sure. Eh? Right. So it's all, we are definitely. And I want to ask this question of you, Octavia, if you don't mind. I'd like to ask your mom to take us out today. And you know, Mom, Reverend, you know, it was a pleasure, blessed to have you here today. Appreciate you showing up and coming in to see your daughter. It's always excellent. So we're going to give you the last words, Reverend, and we're looking forward to them.
Well, thank you for allowing me a platform. I did not expect to say anything. So, but you know, it's just a proud mom thing. Octavia's doing very well, and she does exude confidence. I think it's something that she and her brother had since birth. And some things, as far as technology is concerned, I think was just a natural given to her and her brother. But I try to support her in every way that I can, and so it's an honor to be able to come on this platform and just listen. But I just want to say to all of you, you know, whatever you desire, it can be accomplished. You just have to desire it. You have to have it in your heart. I am a product of Edward Waters College, small HBCU in Jacksonville, Florida, which is now it's Edward Waters University. And when I was studying there, our college president, who is now deceased, but he was the Reverend Dr. Cecil Wayne Cone. And he always said to us, if your mind can conceive and with your heart you believe, then you can achieve. And so I just want to leave that with you today, that you can achieve whatever you desire. It's up to you. And as Octavia said, you know, it's your end. And for some, it's your why. But whether it's your why or your end, go ahead and make it happen, because it all depends on you.
Gotcha. Thank you. Them some big shoes to fill there, Octavia. Look, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to share my screen one more time, because I want to make sure that we get a look at the next series of monthly interview sessions. Next month, Lisa Beth Latini Walker, the CEO of Lumen Worldwide. The month after that, Ryan Higgins, who's the deputy CIO and the CISO from Department of Commerce. After that, we have Kiana Hicks, the founder of Pathway Forward, and she has a guest speaker or a guest moderator too. There, that will be Serenity Smile. After that, in August, we have Heather Grant Evans, who's the CISO from SailPoint. And in September, Guillermo Diaz, the chairman of High Tech, and Danielle, in October, Danielle Dissello, the senior leader of America's solutions from Amazon, solutions architect from Amazon. in November, which is not shown here, I'm going to be endeavoring to interview all 7 of the chapter presidents here at Cyversity Impact. So stay tuned, come and join us. Don't not visit us. And I've already cued the going away music, Jay-Z, not guilty. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for showing up. I appreciate your time here.
Thank you. See you guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.